Okay.
Okay. Well, I want to start by giving a shout out to JJS of Montreal member Gary Perlman, who was awarded the IAJGS Volunteer of the Year award for his incredible work on the cemetery records and Matseva of Montreal. We're very proud of Gary and, of course, of what we've been able to do. And for those of you who have not searched the burial records on Jober, which is probably the place to start, you'll see that there is a link from many of the search results to a supplemental page on the JGS of Montreal website. And Gary, later on, when there's an opportunity, please demonstrate it, okay? All right, Gary. All right, so first of all, again, welcome. And we would like everybody to raise their hand when they have a question so that we don't have crosstalk. It's not necessary actually to mute your, excuse me, mute your microphone unless there's some background noise. But if you choose to do that, that's fine as well. So let's start with the first person who has a question. Raise your hand. No questions. Oh, good. Oh, Merrill. Good morning, Merrill.
Well, I don't have to be first, but if nobody else raised their hand. I had always heard the name Paschal as being in some way connected to my family. I think some of you may know about the Paschal hardware stores, which were well known at some point. And I just recently learned about the connection, and I'm surprised to find out, I think that there's a connection on both sides of my family. And I learned that on my mother's side, it's by marriage. I think my grandfather's half-brother married into the family, the Paschal family. But I also learned that my cousins think that our fathers were cousins of the Paschal family, and I haven't found that connection. And my cousins gave me two Paschal names, and I can't find, I haven't yet, I just learned this in the last few days, so I haven't done extensive research, but since we're here, I thought I might get some tips from you as to how to find the connection to my father's family, which is Blau, and my grandmother's maiden name, which was Lobel.
Okay, so the fast way may very well be find a family tree online.
I did look at one that was limited, that did not have either my family or the two names that my cousins gave me of Beth and Cecil Paschal.
Well, have you tried to reach out to the person that put up that family tree?
I haven't yet. I didn't find it on Jewish Gen. Somebody sent it to me, another Paschal in Montreal, who said she's not part of that family, but she did a little research and found my family. So I will search that more. As I said, I've just begun this particular line of questioning.
Okay. Aileen, you want to talk about the Paschals?
Yeah, Beth Malin Paschal's my cousin.
Oh.
Who is? I'm sorry?
Bess Paschal.
Okay.
Is my cousin. She married a Paschal. Her maiden name is Malin. She is my grandmother's niece, so my great uncle's daughter. So I have a little bit of Paschal on my family tree.
Let me just jump in. If you want to build a family tree for the Paschals, then I won't say the easy way, but the easy way is to write to Vitals at JGS-Montreal and get a printout of all the Pascal vital records. And when I say the vital records, from 1842 to 1841 to 1942, I'm talking about the full extractions. I mean, you can look on ancestry.com for all the Pascals, but like I was saying earlier, we have made full extractions, and the full extractions are obviously much easier to link people into one family. In addition,
So wait, excuse me, where do I write, did you say?
Vitals, VITALS
Yeah.
at JGS-Montreal.
Oh, okay, thank you. And just
And
one
that,
more thing, Aileen, maybe we should be in contact and to exchange details. Is that possible?
I'll put my email address in the chat. You can
Thank
email
you so
me,
much.
'cause I
Okay,
have-
sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
okay. And in addition, as I was also saying earlier, we have the marriage records, from the marriage index from the province of Quebec from 1926 to 1996. And those marriage entries provide a lot of information that you don't see in the birth records, in the Drouin records. You actually get ages and in some cases dates of birth. So that's also a very valuable help in trying to connect families. And then, of course, there's the burial records and the father's name and the burial records for people that I can't place otherwise. So that would be the way I would approach it. One of the other things to keep in mind, and this, I'm always reminded about it because of what happened. A man in Boston had discovered that he had a Jewish father, and he wanted to know, obviously, a little bit more about his Jewish roots. And he reached out to some of the people that were links, that were matches, and but he still didn't pin it down as to where he fit in this particular family, until he discovered an anniversary announcement. I think it was a 30th wedding anniversary announcement in the Canadian Jewish News, which listed everybody who attended, all the family that attended that anniversary party and their relationships. And he was able to use that source to finally identify who his father was. What happened after that, and his father is still living, and his father does not know about this man at the present time, and that's because of the desire of the son of the father, or at least the half brother of the man in Boston, not wishing to get involved at this particular point. But going back to the Canadian Jewish Review, you can reach the Canadian Jewish Review. You can search it by using the dashboard on the JGS of Montreal home website, and that dashboard is such a convenient way to both cover a lot of ground in terms of the different sources that you're looking at, but also something that is a go-to place when you're searching for Canadian and other sources. And if anybody's not familiar with the dashboard, take a moment and take a look. Okay, next question. Okay, nobody. Okay, Susan. You're muted. Oh, here we go.
Okay. Well, thank you. First of all, I feel like I know all of you because I went back. I watched the taped sessions that you had in the spring. So, and I actually got a lot of information from going through those 2 or 3 that you already recorded. I started by wanting to find out information about my husband's great-grandmother that we had no idea ever left Poland, but realized that she ended up in Montreal with a son and daughter who had emigrated to Montreal in the 1920s. So I don't have so many questions right now about Montreal, but this same great-grandmother had another daughter, my husband's grandmother, who went to Cleveland. And their roots, as I said, were from Poland. So I'm hoping you can help me a little bit with on the JRI Poland side, Stanley.
Well, this workshop is, and no matter where you're researching or what you're researching, you can ask the question. We may
Okay.
not be able to help, but we can try. Do you know where in Poland?
Yes. Well, the story here's the situation. My husband's grandfather, we knew nothing about. He died young in the 1920s. Knew nothing of any siblings, parents, or anything else. And a acquaintance of mine contacted me and said, "Oh, we're related." And she came up with this huge family tree that had my husband's grandfather connected to. We know that his father's name was Wolf Bear from his tombstone, and she had him connected to a wolf bear who died in 1960 in Detroit, and with brothers and sisters and aunts and uncles. We said, no, this can't be, because that wolf bear was only 9 years older than my husband's grandfather, whose name is Chaim Mendel. The last name is Lakritz. Anyway, through going through the JRI Poland website, I found other documents, and I was able to establish, also through the help of the person who set up that tree, that there was another wolf, Wolf Berek, who was Chaim Mendel's father, and actually the uncle of the Chaim Bear that they mistakenly had as his father. I would still like to be able to find more information about Chaim Mendel Lakritz, because I know that who he married, that he did marry this woman whose family is in Montreal. And I know that Wolf Berek died, if everything matches up, when Chaim was a year old. So I'm wondering if his mother, and I have her name, remarried, if there are half brothers and sisters or any relation at all.
So here, first of all, what's the town where they lived in Poland?
Okay, they lived in Chorzele, spelled Chorzele or Horzele, I think in the Plock region.
Oh, you're talking about Chorzele.
Okay, Chorzele.
Chorzele.
Correct.
Okay. All right. So I have good news.
Yes.
What you see on the JRI Poland website are basic indices.
Right.
On my computer are full extracts.
Wonderful.
We haven't put them online yet because that's going to be done as part of, well, there are two steps that JRI Poland takes before we put data online. Excuse me. One is we fund what we've paid for. And I'm not going to bring up all the internal JRI Poland documentation, but I can check immediately on the status of fundraising for every one of the 600 towns that we have records for online, or have records that are not online. Once it's funded, then we can put the data online. We've been holding back recently so that when we introduce the new website and data management system, and as I said, anybody who wants to see the video of the presentation that we made at the conference about the new system, the new website, the new search features of the new system, then just let me know. You can email me at smsdiamond@aol.com and I'll send you the link. Or I guess you could put it in the chat box as well. So.
Well, I have and
Hold
got
on.
translated the death record, his death record, Wolf Berek's death record, and Chaim's marriage record in Poland.
hold on just a second. When did this family more or less leave Jorgelli?
Okay. Chaim Mendel, the son, left in 1907. He
Okay.
was married in June and left in December of 1907 and ended up in the United States.
Okay. You know what? Let me just illustrate for people. Let me show you what the Jorgelli data looks like. Okay. So I'm going to try to share my screens. Share my screen. You see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So we're going to go to, I'm going to bring up Jorgelli, open. These are all the towns and the data for all the towns. So we have Jorgelli. You'll see it says phase 3. Phase 3 means full extracts. And so we go here and we see, let's take a look first of all at the surnames. So this is, and I will make this larger. So here we can see all the surnames. And what was the family name?
It's Lakritz, and I think it was spelled Lakryc.
Whoops. Oh, let me just, yeah. So we see that there were
160.
3 spellings, 163 references to that name, 165 in total in the JRI Poland data. So we know that if we do a sort, let's do a sort. We'll do it by quantity. We'll do it by largest to smallest. And you will see that they were one of the major families in the town. And that's always a good sign because there's going to be a lot of data and a lot of intermarriage, and you can build a huge family tree. So now we'll go take a look at the data. Open. And so let's look at the more recent data. This is the older data. I'm sorry. Let me. Okay. And you can see we have the data going back to 1822.
Okay.
And it's all, you have the father, it's not for many of the years. However, it stops that we don't have the parents' names starting part of the years because that hasn't been done yet. But then we start at the, let's say, the more recent years, and here are the births. So what I want to know is what we have for that family. So we use something called the JRI Poland Name Finder, which is available on the web. And I think it was excuse me.
Lakryc
RYC.
at the most.
And so this is going to enable me to very quickly, hopefully it doesn't hang up, to create a file with all the entries for that name. So this is what we do in advance. So there's 197 separate records. And you can see them all here. So when was somebody born? One of the people.
Okay. Yeah, Wolf Barrick was born approximately 1836.
1836. Okay. So now keep in mind, of course, that and let me just increase the size, that many births were registered late, long after the event. So I don't see Wolf Barrick here at all.
Okay.
And that's possible. He wasn't registered. Sometimes it's as many as 30 years. Now, did he get married in Poland?
He got married in Poland. He got married, let me see. I know, I have the name of his wife, but I don't know anything about where they were married.
Do you have the surname?
Yes, it's Jankieff.
So let's add that.
Okay.
Jan
Kief.
Jan
Kief,
Ki
as in Frank.
Yankus.
No, with an
yeah.
F.
Oh, wait a
Frank.
second. That's
Yankev.
that Yankov is a given name, not a surname.
No, but her first name is Rosa. Roja. Rozja.
Well, let's search on this and see whether that comes up.
Okay.
I mean that would, if see, there's only 4 rows, but what you
Her name was listed as Chaim's mother in his death record, and that's how it was listed.
no, and who is Wolf Barrick, is 1886 death here?
Yes,
Oh, and he's
that I knew.
son of Zelman and Leah.
Correct. Right.
Okay, well, here's, you see the given name Yankov Lakritz, age 50.
That's I think a brother or.
Okay, I don't want to spend too much time on this,
That's okay.
but and let me stop sharing screens. Okay, stop sharing screens. So the point is that, and I will be saying that this afternoon, we have a lot of data that is not online. I don't know offhand what the fundraising status of Jorgeli is, but if you're interested in a file with all the entries and all the extracts, and you want copies of the scans of those records, then they are available for what we call a qualifying contribution. So write me, and I'll be glad to go into more detail. And the way to write me, if you don't want to mark down, is just the name of the town at JRI Poland, jri-poland.org, and that will get to me. Okay, next question.
Stanley, it was pointed out to me that Mel might have a question.
Oh,
Mel?
Yes, hi. Very brief. There's an entry in JRI for a great-great-grandfather's sister. And I'm wondering, is it possible to look at that entry through the database now and give me one bit more of information of what else to look for?
okay. And what was the name? Where was she from?
From Warsaw. And the last name is Kruk, K-R-U-K. K-R-U-K. It's the exact name, and it's Warsaw Gubernia.
Okay, so let's search that. Share a screen again. Okay, and we're going to JRI Poland, search, and the name is Kruk, K-R-U-K, right?
Needless to say, it became Cook in North America.
Yeah. I know that one. And then the given name was what?
No, just go by Crook. Just go by last name, exact, not phonetically, to save you time. Just go exact surname. Exact. Yep. And then just Warsaw Gubernia.
And a birth, marriage, or death?
No, that doesn't matter. It comes right up. I'll show it to you immediately. I want to save you as much time as possible.
192, and that's also,
Okay. So scroll down to Warsaw 1821, that database. Keep going.
hold on a second, yeah.
Okay, Warsaw. Okay, so you'll see Esther Crook. It's one of those right there. Estera. It's right there. There, you see the second from the bottom. Right? No, you just there. Estera. Yeah.
Right,
Okay. So that's the entry. That's my great-great-grandfather's sister. Now,
right,
what's useful about this is it gives the parents' names, Zelman and Sura, right?
Yep.
So that would take us back to their births in the late 1700s.
Right.
That's Zelman. Now, how would I find any further information about him?
okay, so here's a couple of things that you have to keep in mind.
Okay.
These extracts that were made of Warsaw records are not full extracts. For example, you'll notice it doesn't have the house number.
Right.
The house number can often be a key. So that's one. Number two, it doesn't refer to other towns. And that can be a key because so many people gravitated to Warsaw. So the question then comes up, how do I look at that record?
I think most of the crooks came from Plock, P-L-O-C-K.
Okay, if they came from Plock, yeah, in Polish, the C is a TS, Plock.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, we're just starting to do some exceptional work in Plock because our town leader is vitally interested in it for her own family. That's Greta Davis of Sydney, Australia. It's a little late to wake her up, but I could have patched her in. She's an incredible lady. So that's number one. So the first thing you want to do is get this particular record. And so happens that in 1 week, I will have a scan of that record.
Great.
And let me explain to you why. Many years ago, when Family Search, when LDS started to scan the records, the Polish records, they did not have permission to put them online, but they can use them internally. Permission has to come from the Polish State Archives. But the Polish State Archives ultimately is going to have all scans online. So as a favor to us, and we've worked very closely with the Mormons of Family Search, they scanned all the Warsaw records for us. I think 45 or 48 different microfilms. And my hard drive with that data crashed. And so a replacement is on its way from New York because my colleague Hadassah Lipsius, who is the town leader for Warsaw, has a copy. And so that's coming. So that will be, you can write me about that in about a week or so, and I can get you that extract.
Okay.
Now, if we go to the to Plock, unfortunately, the Plock archives have not yet put the images online, but the director of the Plock archives told us about 2-3 months ago that and let me just verify it because it is good news for you. Let me go on here. This is my super search system called X1. And if anybody is trying to find data on their computer, you'll see here I have 601,000 separate files, and I want to have Plock, and here it is. Let's see. No, there's a later message than this.
I'll just email you. That's okay if you want
Yeah,
to say.
but what I was looking for was the plots director's email, and that would. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing screens. But the important thing is that what you see in JRI Poland is the tip of the iceberg. There's always more to find out. And one of the things that we're aiming at in the new system is to be able to make it much easier for researchers to put all this together, to tie all this together, to understand what is happening.
I just have two fast pieces of information could help people. Kruk is Polish for raven, like the bird raven, because I guess someone had dark hair a long time ago. Now, many people may have changed their Jewish names to Raven. So if you know anybody named Raven, their name is possibly Kruk. I knew people in my neighborhood. I never realized that they were that. The German for Kruk is Raab, R-A-A-B. So there's a cabinet minister in Boris Johnson's cabinet who was originally from Poland. His father was Polish, half Polish. So I don't know if I want to be related to anybody in Boris Johnson's cabinet, but it's possible that Rob and Kruk and all of this is one big happy mishpacha. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much.
Well, Mel, you've raised a very important point. It's a learning point. What I love, and that is to think more broadly about what the name and the origins of a name. And in Polish, in Jewish families in Poland, there are many different people with family names that are after animals and birds. Skowronek is a bird, for example. But what I have discovered personally is that, you know, the Taylor family of Dublin, Mervyn Taylor, former labor minister in the Polish government, they were Hayats, C-H-A-I-T, Hayat, which means Taylor. And so when great-grandfather Abraham Taylor moved from Janów Sokolski in Poland to Belgium and then to Dublin, he changed the name from Hayat to Taylor. And you have to really look at that kind of transition of names as part of the research activity. So, next question.
Liechtenstein became Lightstone, I think.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, Aileen.
So on the same topic of JRI Poland, my grandfather's from Warsaw, his birth record is on there, as is his brother's. And I don't see any of his other siblings or parents. Are there still more indexes or files to go on from Warsaw, or is everything already there?
You know, that is a question that we get all the time. Warsaw is the only city in Poland, only town in Poland, where records were kept on a circul basis, meaning police district.
Mm-hmm.
If I were to, and I'm not going to go to, if I were to bring up a chart of all the different police districts and the birth, marriage, and deaths that survived, you wouldn't even see a checkerboard. You would see a totally random entries. And that's because Warsaw suffered such huge damage during the war. And so the records were being stored separately, but some of them had been moved to the archives. The archives survived. Unfortunately, records after 1920 did not survive because those were still in these individual offices. And some of these individual offices had not transferred their registers to the Polish State Archives or the Polish archives. And we've seen this all the time. I mean, in some towns, none of the records survived because the records had remained for whatever reason, whether the person responsible had just not bothered to fulfill the obligations of moving those registers. So that's the problem that you're faced with, that the family may have lived in this one area that the records were destroyed badly damaged or whatever have you. So that can be the problem. On the other hand, there are, as I was pointing out before, not all the records were fully extracted. Most of them were not fully extracted. And so there may be some clues in other records that could help you. So I would say that after you've done your exploratory work, you could write to Hadassah Lipsius, who was the town leader, and that's right on the Your Town page. Keep in mind that Hadassah works full time, a religious woman, so if she answers, it'll be either on Friday when she's not working or Sunday. One other thing, there are other sources of records for Warsaw. There are notarial records and property records. And those records can often have a wealth of genealogical information. If you want to learn a little bit more about notarial records, there is a link on our website under Learn. If you go to the Learn on the navigation bar and then scroll down to other sources, I think it's the third one, near the bottom you'll see an article about Polish notarial records by Ania Wernicka of Warsaw, who is a professional Jewish she's not Jewish, but professional genealogist, with a PhD in Jewish studies. So she's a really great expert and is very familiar with the notarial records of Warsaw. Okay,
Thank you.
next question. Schäm sich nicht. Okay, so while we're waiting for somebody else to figure out they've got a question. I mean, I'm very impressed by the fact that everybody knows everything. Gail, you have a question? Turn on your microphone, please.
Sure. Since everybody's delving into your inventory, I would be curious to know what you have for my family name in Mizrich Podlaski.
Oh, you've just hit the mother lode.
Why?
Because we have a very active town leader for Mizrich, and that's Max Wald, W-A-L-D, of Melbourne, Australia.
Okay.
Ooh, that's a terrible mistake. You should never mix up Melbourne and Sydney. That's like Montreal and Toronto, or London and Liverpool. So anyway, we have a number of sources of information for Mizrich. We have the books of residence that were in use from 1890 to 1931, and the books of residence from 1931 to 1940. And in fact, in my presentation at the conference last month, in the virtual presentation, I talk about how Adam Richter of Rochester, New York, he was dying of cancer, and he schlepped himself to his computer every day, pushing to finish the work. He spoke Polish on the 1931 to 1940 books of residence. So for those who are not familiar with the books of residence, they are a house by house census in use over many years. These were basically created for tax purposes, but they are a dream. When they survived, they're a dream for researchers, because they have the whole family on one page with their dates of birth, with their parents' names, where they lived before, and in the Uvagi column, the remarks column at the end, often who they married and where they moved to, or when they died, and the act number. So keeping in mind, and anybody who's interested in Poland, keeping in mind the fact that many of the births were never registered, this can be the only place where you see reference to a specific individual. In fact, for my town and Phillipstown, Ostrów Mazowiecka, when we sorted the books of residence, the 1890 to 1931 books of residence, and we sorted it by date of birth, somewhere around 22% of the people, dates of birth were only years, and only years by protocol, by statement. That told us, and it proved it, that there were vast number of people who were never registered at birth. So contact Max Wald. And again, his email is on the town page, and pose your question to Max. That's the responsibility of the town leaders. I just am the default town leader when there's no one else around. Next question. Edna, no questions, Edna? Unmute your microphone. Unmute your microphone.
I don't know who you're speaking to. I have,
Okay, I'm still waiting for someone to really touch on Lithuania. So I'm very, very patient. I'm waiting for some. Actually, last time we got together, Stanley, or maybe the time before, there was a lady from Israel who promised to phone me. I gave her my phone number, my email address, and everything. She said, no, I'm not giving you mine because I will be in touch with you. Haven't heard from her since, and anxious. So I'm sitting very patiently and saying,
Well, okay. So
I have the chance.
we have the email addresses of the people that have participated. Do you remember her name?
Not at all.
Okay, so if you go online on the JGS of Montreal website, you can look at the videos of the previous workshops, and you will see yourself, and you will see yourself communicating with this lady.
Okay.
Okay. It's nice to
Thanks,
solve
Sandy.
problem. So, Gary, we have a moment. Can you jump in and just illustrate the burial information?
Sure. So I share my screen, I guess.
Yep.
And okay, so you should be seeing the JGS Montreal site.
Right.
I always like it's easier to look for my family. So I'll look for Victor, Moses, and I'll jump down to death and burials. And here's Jober, and there's Moses Victor, my great-great-grandfather. So here's the full burial record, and that's pretty nice. Very, very good condition stone there. Down here, it says that there's more information. So if I go to there, here's the more information. From the top, there's a list of burials. So here's a list of burials, and it jumps into all of the victors grouped together. You can sort this list by, when people die, or their age, or whatever. So that's just some more information. There's precise GPS coordinates. And so I'm using Google Maps to display that. And that's, believe me, that's where he is.
Amazing.
And so it's got some of transcription from the Hebrew. This is a computed estimate based on him dying in 1912 and him being 71, which is on the gravestone. I have somehow, for some reason, I have the family pictures from my great-grandparents' wedding. So, so I put those pictures into the record. This is Moses Victor's, or as we call it, Moshe Meyer's gravestone before I had it relettered. So I was taking pictures for Jober, and I said, well, that's not good enough for my family. So I had it relettered, and I had Cecil Victor also relettered. That's
Gary,
my
Gary, can you move
great-grandmother.
your screen up? We don't see the gravestone.
Okay, I can't see what you're seeing.
Oh, okay.
So you don't see any.
We don't,
What
we,
are you
we see
seeing?
we see the photograph, the 1901 wedding photograph, but we don't see the gravestone underneath.
That's interesting because I've scrolled it down and it's not displaying it. I'll try to refresh. Does that help?
No, we don't see it.
Don't see it. Oh well.
All right,
So
go on.
okay. I also have some links in there. There's links to Jenny and Family Search, Find a Grave. Those aren't in a lot of records, nor are the links to, for example, his wife. And I guess when I scroll this, can you see that scrolling?
No. We see the scroll bar, but it doesn't. It's on the right, but it's right near the top.
Yeah, so that's a bug in Zoom, I'm guessing, because I see it scrolling, so I think you should see it scrolling. But anyways, there are links that let me jump from person to person. There's my grandmother, and
Can you show us some of those links?
I'm clicking on them. I guess it's not changing the screen.
No, it's not.
So, so that's unfortunate. Let's see. So it should have disappeared, did it?
No.
Okay, so it's screen sharing isn't working here.
Okay. If you want, I'll bring it up.
Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay, and I'll try to bring it up because I think this is okay. And
Yeah.
what was the name again? It was Victor.
Yeah. And Moses.
Okay, and
if
we
you jump down to burials.
Jober, there it is. There it is. And we're going to Victor Moses right here, right?
That's it.
And there it is. And we're going to go.
Well, that works better.
Okay, so we can see what Gary did. He had the grave relettered and also his wife right beside him, the location, an overall picture of the entrance. So you actually get a guided hand. And then we want to look at son Abraham. We have this lovely wedding picture.
Those are my great-grandparents.
And the actual marriage record from the Drouin collection.
Now, my great-grandmother, every document, her name is spelled differently because everyone called her Shlema. That was her Jewish name, but her civil name was Jeanette. And so she's Janetta, she's Janet, she's Jeanette, she's all these different names. she never knew what her name was to civilly, but she knew what people used for reference to her.
And this I guess is from the Canadian Jewish Record.
Yes. Canadian Jewish Review had
Canadian Jewish Review, right?
Had great records of events like marriages and anniversaries, and for genealogical purposes, it named everyone who attended. Now, there's a lot of discussion of taffeta and chiffon and turbans, just a lot. But
let me just jump in and say what a mitzvah it is to be able to find these old marriage and anniversary records, announcements in the Canadian Jewish Review, with shoes and hat to match. Oh, wow. I mean, just look at that.
And at the end, you see
detail.
Out-of-town guests. At the end of the article, there's always out-of-town guests and where they came from. And so I've found family all over the United States, mostly in the Northeast, of people coming into town for this event.
So let me just let's take a look at Sam. And that's the same family. Let me while I'm sharing, I just want to mention something to everybody. If you have this kind of information for your family, and I know I'm volunteering Gary's services, if you will, but I know that he would welcome receiving this kind of these photographs of the family, Canadian Jewish Review entries to add to your family, because this is going to be a permanent record. And for many of us, this is a convenient way of putting our family information online so that wherever people are in the world going forward, they will be able to find this kind of information. Am I speaking out of turn, Gary?
It's fine with me. Well, let's wait until it becomes overwhelming. It hasn't in years, so it's fine with me for me to add information.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want me to show right now, Gary, and I'll stop sharing screens?
Sure. Click on the Genie link.
On the which one?
The Genie.
Oh, that's Gertie. Oh, I'm seeing the Genie, right. Okay.
So if you scroll down a little bit, I don't see it anywhere. Anyway, this ends up listing hundreds of relatives of, I think this is Gertie Safran. And so to say that there's, more information than Jober has on our website, it goes to various other sites, and there's really a lot of information. So you can get a whole family tree with hundreds of people just by clicking through that link.
Now you were the one who put this up, right?
Well, this is Jeannie, and so it's a shared family tree. So Barbara Ovadia is my second cousin, and so she put up this record and a bunch of other records. Maybe she put most of the records in the family. And on Genie, you can link up to other trees and merge the trees.
Right.
Sometimes those trees are terribly inaccurate, but you can go in and fight it out with your relatives to make corrections. And so I've been pretty successful in doing that.
So if we want to look at Sam, we bring up Sam.
Sam is one of 7 Uncle Sams of my mother. And 2 of those Uncle Sams were brothers. So this was Solomon Safran, and his brother was Shimon Safran, but they both went by Sam. They had trouble crossing the border together.
Same thing.
I would imagine so. Okay, anything else that you want me to touch on here?
No, I think that's it.
Okay, so we're going to stop sharing screens. But I think, and I don't know whether other people feel the same way I do, having this kind of home for information, if you're not inclined to do your own thing and have your own website and compile all sorts of stuff, but you've got family pictures and you've got information, it is a way to find a home for it. Okay, so we see a lot of people who have not showing their photographs, so I don't know whether or not they have questions. Is there anything, any more questions? I don't see any more questions. Here we go, Susan, yes.
Okay, I mentioned this great-grandmother who ended up in Montreal. Her husband died in Poland before 1901 because he's listed as dead in some marriage records. The last name was Pejta, P-E-J-T-A, if I'm pronouncing it right.
P-E-J-A?
T-A, P-E-J-T-A.
Yeah, Pejta.
Pejta.
Yeah.
Shmuel or Shmuel, and he either died in Jano, and I don't know which one.
Yanov.
Or
Yanov.
Yanov or Brezhnitz.
Okay, so yeah, Przasnysz. Now Przasnysz, there's a Yanovo near Przasnysz. In fact, the town leader for both of those is Marty Myers, who actually extracted the Yanovo records. So, did you actually see an entry in JRI Poland for that?
I haven't.
You haven't?
I haven't, no.
Okay.
I only have his name because of the marriage records that I found.
Okay, so let's see if we can find something. I'm going to share screens again. And I'm not going to search JRI Poland. I'm going to try using my X1 super search. And we're looking for the name P-E-J-T-A.
Correct.
Okay, Pejta. And we're looking in, you notice Chorzelli and Przasnysz.
Right, they're all around the same area.
All right, but now we want the vital records. So I'm going to be putting an X and I'm going to sort. So these are all the places, Chorzelli, Blony, Yanovo. See, right away, I now know which Yanovo.
Okay,
All
which
right.
one? Which one? So I'll know.
Well, it's northeast of northwest of Warsaw. So
Okay.
now, what's the given name?
Shmuel, S-D-M-U-L.
Okay, so here's Shmuel, 1836 in Yanovo, born.
Okay.
And he was the son of, let's take a look at that. He was the son of Isaac and Fremet, and Fremet was the daughter of Shimko.
Wow.
Yeah, and we have a scan of that record as well.
Okay.
So now the question is, what is it you want to know about him and his relation?
I guess I was just curious when he died, when he was born, and now I have parents' names, etc. So that his line sort of stopped with him with no information. I couldn't
Okay,
go back any
so
further.
we have his birth, and here we see a reference in Plonsk.
Mm-hmm.
And in Plonsk, we see a marriage
To
of a Michal, and he was the son of a Pejta, who was the son of a Shmuel. So that's the right one.
okay.
And so what you want to do is you want to get in touch with Marty Myers.
Okay.
And he's not the town leader for Plonsk, although I phoned him last night and I'm trying to convince him to become the area coordinator, which takes in Plonsk. So the timing is rather interesting. He's a great researcher. He's written a wonderful article for Avutenu recently as well. And excuse me.
He's the town leader for what currently?
I'm sorry,
He is the town leader for where right now?
Yanovo.
Okay,
Yanovo for Yanovo and also for Brezhazhny. So
okay,
and what, you know, you have to be blessed really to get a quality town leader. I mean, we've got a lot of great town leaders and we have others that are what I would call not really proactive, but where you have a good one, you're very, very, very fortunate. And so the other thing that keep in mind is that there may be other Petas in this. Oh, this is a given name Peta. This may not apply at all, but it's a unique name. So sometimes there are clues that you have to follow up on. Let's see if this is this birth of 18. Well, let's bring up this file. Let's bring up this file. Let me just see if it's the master file. And we're looking to see if there are other pages in here that will be helpful. I'm putting the P in square brackets so we don't get a B or something else. It's searching, although we don't see the file. It's hidden behind this one. One of the things that I emphasize is don't always focus on that one person, because sometimes, you know, like they say in Maine, you can't get there from here. So you have to find another route. And that's what we really teach ourselves when we're doing genealogical research, is approach the question from every possible angle. And sometimes, let me get Yanovo. So you can see all the pages here. And you have Shmuel.
right.
And let me make this larger. And you'll see later on, Shmuel, you're starting to see his children. Hanalea, Nosek Leib, and the marriage of his daughter Frima. Oh, this would be a sibling. And so it goes up to 1867. And then you've got another file with the later records that you can search. So I don't know if these are online at the present time. I don't recall, but like I said, reach out to Marty and he certainly can try to help you.
Do you have an email for Marty, or where can I find it?
Yeah, the way you find it is very simple. You go to the JRI Poland website.
Okay.
And let's go up here to the website. And for those who don't know, these are my great grandparents related to the Hayats, who I was referring to before, and my great grandmother's and my grandmother's brother's family. And this is actually my grandmother's birth record. And she's the one who passed the genetic trait to me. So I've honored her that way, although it won't appear in our new website. So now we go to your town and we go to J and we go to Yanovo, and then you will see Marty Myers.
Okay. Got it.
And one other thing when you're searching on on JRI Poland, and let's look at the search system here, for example. It's very important to read help with search types and help with search parameters. People are not taking full advantage of the options that we provide. So I want to show you, just for those who have interest in Poland, a couple of tricks. One of the things, for example, is where did the families of Peta live? So we'll look in the name finder. Now this name finder actually is going to become automatic when you search on our new website. So we're going to look for Petas. And it says only a phonetic search, meaning to say it's not giving you a sound alike. It's going to focus on that name. And so we're going to map. So you can see where they all lived.
Right.
And notice that they're concentrated right up here. Hold on a second. Przasnysz, Chorzeli, and they don't appear in Janowo, and I'm not sure why that's the case. Oh, maybe, well, whatever. So that's a very important way to get a picture of where your family lived. Now, another thing to keep in mind is, well, how did they get all these places? So what we do is we go to the time period and we say play progression. And now you'll see it's, they start here, they move here, the next, and here's the decade. And as the decades pass, you can see how the family is expanding. On the assumption, and very important, it is an assumption that this is all the same family and that multiple families didn't take the same family name. When it's a name, a patronymic name like Mordkovitz or Markovitz or Rabinovitz, then you know that it's taken by many, many different families. But when it's a adjectival name, like a bird or in my family name, the name Widelec, my grandmother's name, means fork. And there are only two separate families in Poland with that name. I know there are two separate families because I paid for a DNA for the other family, and because I wasn't sure whether we were related or not. So that's a very important thing to understand, no matter whether it's Poland or any country, the origin of the name. And if you want to know the origin of the name and where it's seen, there's another way to look, and that is using Alexander Bader's books. And for those of you who are not familiar with Alexander Bader's books, let me bring them up, and we'll put up Bader surnames. So here's all his different books: a dictionary of Jewish surnames from Italy, dictionary of Jewish surnames from Maghreb, a dictionary of Jewish surnames from Galicia, from Poland. And so there it is. I have many of these books because I need them, but these are wonderful sources. And you can see all his other books. And what these books say is what the origin of the name is, as well as where it is seen in different towns' records. This is a little bit out of date, but it's from 1898 when we first supplied data to Sasha Bader. But if you go to JRI Poland, you will, and let's go back here for a second. No, it's not there. You can learn where a family's from by searching on the website. Now, another little trick is to search by town only. So where did the Jews of Yanovo, where did they go? Where did they end up in other towns? And we're going to search exactly. And you'll see they're concentrated in the Lumja Gubernia. They're in Pietrkov and Plotsk in Prussia. These are all within a large radius. Then you've got these outliers in Tarnopol. Warsaw would be considered part of that circle, but the outliers are likely from the Janov in Galicia. So if we take a look at the Prussian records, now this one here, it says Yanovo Kovno, so that's the Lithuanian one as opposed to the Polish one. But it's an indicator of another way of pulling together information that you otherwise might have a hard time in locating. All right, I'm going to stop sharing and invite other questions. Yes, Aileen.
Comment and a question. Alexander Bader is giving a talk to our genealogical society in January. If anyone wants to join Zoom.
Which society?
OCJGS.
Oh, okay, the
Orange County.
The Orange County, where I'm visiting today.
Yes, I'll
Yeah.
see you there soon.
Yeah.
So yeah, Alexander Bader is going to be talking January 24th, and anyone can sign up. So just if you want to look for that.
And just keep in mind when Sasha speaks, he is not the most effusive speaker,
Okay.
but you have to listen carefully because he has a lot to say, and he is beyond belief in terms of his knowledge. He has been a blessing. You know, the story of Sasha Bader and how he came to the world of Jewish genealogy is rather fascinating, because when he was writing his first book on the names in the Russian Empire, he is born in Moscow, but he's a professor in France and speaks multiple languages. When he first started collecting all this information from the property records of 1906 in the Russian Empire, and he contacted Gary Mokotov of Avutenu, Gary did not believe him. Gary thought he was not a kook, but some strange guy that this can't be true. But let me tell you, it's a marriage made in heaven, and it's been a mitzvah for all of us. Okay, so next question.
I actually have a question also. In Jera, Poland, in Stashov, can you look up a name and see if there's
in Stashov?
Stashov.
Okay. Now you know that the town leader of Stashov is Jean-Pierre Strovis. Strovis. Jean-Pierre is as his name would give you the impression, born in France. He is a computer expert living in excuse me, in Israel. I would suggest you address the question if you can't find it online. And here's the important thing to know about Stashov. And if anybody wants to know where Stashov, it's in East Poland, in the Radom Gubernia. The one thing to keep in mind about Stashov is that we have a lot more records than appear on full extracts, including full extracts of the records up to 1942 in the Civil Records Office. So, and those don't appear online, the 20th century records, because of Polish privacy laws. And part of the records are still covered by Polish privacy, particularly the births. So we are very careful in what we do with the data, because we don't want anybody in Poland looking over our shoulder saying, No, that's wrong. Next question. Oh, come on, everybody. You certainly. Mel has a question. I knew Mel saw me looking at his face. Yes, go ahead, Mel.
Okay. The easy questions are about Poland, so I'm going to give you a hard question.
Okay.
I'll
Can you
remind
speak?
you
Can
that,
you speak a little louder, Mel?
yes, all four of my grandparents came from Romania, which makes it very difficult because it's a difficult place to research. The easier half is Niederhofer because it's a bit of an unusual name and easy to track. My other half, my mother, Cohen, very hard to track Jewish name. So my grandparents, David and Rachel Cohen, actually originally Rachel Jacobson. So tracking David Cohen is almost impossible. It's probably the most common Jewish name, first and second combined. But looking at my grandmother, Rachel Jacobson, now the question is about Romania and exactly where they came from. So my grandfather, David Cohen, was from Brăila, which is the fourth largest city in Romania. It was always Romania. My grandmother, Rachel Jacobson from Iași, that's I-A-S-I, and it was always in Romania. In fact, at one time in the 1850s, it was the capital of Romania. But there's no question that that's Romania. The Niederhofers are from Bukovina, a province which was Ottoman. In 1774 went to the Austrian-Hungarian Empire. So if anyone came here from there before 1920, they said they were Austrian, but now it's Romania. So that was a change, but not on the Jacobson side. They were always in Romania. So my grandmother came with her mother and her sister and brother, so all Jacobsons, in 1896 to Montreal. So the 1911 and 1921 Canada census, my great-grandmother, Molly Jacobson, lists her origin as Austria. So that's a tough question. It could have been Bukovina, or it could have been Austria proper, but it was not Romania. Yet my grandmother was always listed as having been born in Iași, which is Romania. Yet because she was living at home, her citizenship on the early Canada census records is the same as her mother's, which is Austrian. But when they came here, they came alone, not with my great-grandfather, Jacob Jacobson, another easy Jewish name to track down in the records. Where did he come from? Where was he born? When and where did he get married? When did he die? I have no clue about any of this, but I assume he died before 1896. My grandmother married my grandfather in Montreal in 1907. The records are in Drouin, and I have those. And it says the daughter of the late Jacob Jacobson. So he had died before. And in fact, since he didn't come with them in 1896, I assume he died before that. I have not been able to find any record anywhere of when he was born, when he died, where he lived, anything about him. Where should I go about doing that?
Okay. So, Mel, I'm very familiar with the challenge that you have since I've known you since I was 3 years old. Now, have you done DNA?
I have, yes.
Okay. And who did you do DNA with?
Family tree.
Okay. Have you moved your DNA into other or other sites,
Not yet.
then that's the first place you start. You have to move it into, I think it's, I know that obviously there's GEDmatch. GEDmatch is the big one, but I think you can move it into MyHeritage, and I think you can move it into Ancestry. And correct me if I'm wrong. And
I think you can move it into MyHeritage. I'm not so sure about Ancestry.
yeah,
I think
I know
Ancestry
MyHeritage.
is one
And-
way
And
out, but not in, I believe.
all right, so
But
here's
certainly you can move it to MyHeritage.
okay. So MyHeritage and GEDmatch is the important one. Now, GEDmatch is critical because it brings together everything. Number one. Number two, it has been acquired by a commercial organization that I'm sure is working on a much more sophisticated way of utilizing the tools that are available in GEDmatch. One of the interesting things about the multiple sites is, and you get a good example of it by the story that I was able to talk about in the JRI polling presentation, the virtual presentation for the conference. And for those of you who haven't seen it, let me just talk about that story very, very quickly. On July 10th, my colleague, Michael Tobias of Glasgow, Scotland, who is the database manager for JRI Poland, received an email from a lady saying that she has just received her DNA results, a lady in England, and I presume somebody told her to contact Michael, which was very fortunate. And she said that she always knew that the father that she grew up with wasn't her father, that she had a different father. But now she discovered she has a Jewish father. How does she find her Jewish family? And Michael said, okay, well, I have your DNA. You've shared that with me. He put it up on the other sites and he started to work. In the next 3 weeks, using JRI Poland data, using Yad Vashem pages of testimony, and remind me to tell you a little bit about Yad Vashem, something new that's going to happen in the future, and using whatever tools were available to him, he was able to link this lady by the name of Ruth to half siblings in England, Australia, another in England, and the children of half siblings in the United States. 4 of those half siblings had different mothers. So Yankel Berliner, born in Poland in 1914 in Łódź, had fathered all these children by different women, all in 3 weeks. Michael had to go, in some cases, build family trees back to the late 1700s in order to make the connections. 2 of them, that is Ruth and her half-brother, were born a month apart. So our friend Yankel Berliner was a very busy man. And let me tell you not the end of the story. When all this came together, I mean, Michael and I was hysterical because what happened, Michael was saying, I need this record. I need this record. We have scans of all the Łódź records from 1871 to 1939. I need this record. I need this record. He doesn't have them on his servers and I have them on mine. And and he said, bingo, like, oh, we made the connection here. I was like, what's going on, Michael? And he was not fully communicative on on every aspect. And finally, of course, when it all came together, I said, we have to contact, the DNA. I said, which company provided the real key DNA? Because all of them were important in this equation. And Michael said, well, it's MyHeritage. And so I wrote to Gilad, the guy who I know who owns MyHeritage. He absolutely, oh my God, this is fantastic. So he put his PR guy in touch with Michael. Unfortunately, because what we wanted to do obviously is to introduce everybody, put them online, or even face to face in England, etc., and capture the moment. Unfortunately, the family in United States, that is the children of two of these half siblings, they were panicked. They could not believe that their grandfather had done this. And I should explain that the grandfather had, quote, had this family when he was living in Belgium before the war, divorced his wife and joined the Polish armed forces, was serving in the Polish armed forces. This very good looking man, you could take a look at it on this on the photograph in the presentation. And off he went to England and decided to, increase the population of the world. So that's why I'm saying it's a long story, and I hope I didn't put everybody to sleep, but I just want you to know that that is the best illustration of using DNA creatively to link people together. Now, of course, in this case, we were so blessed with having the comprehensive vital records of Poland, and having the scans of all the towns that these families were linked to, the different families. But Mel, I would tell you this, that once you've done your DNA, there are experts who will assist you, some for just because they want to do it, others for pay, who will assist you in saying, okay, this is the chain we have to explore. This is the person we have to contact, because you never know who has information on the family that you've been looking for years. And I think you were a witness at one of our workshops many years ago when a lady came in and she says she's looking for her family from Alsace-Lorraine. And we went to the Jewish Gen Family Finder, and we wanted to see whether that name that she was looking for was present in the Family Finder. And sure enough, it was. And right there and then, using the web form, I sent an email on behalf of the lady sitting around the table. It turned out this woman was her second cousin, and she had been looking for the Montreal family for years, but she didn't even know it was a Montreal family. It was a family that she had lost the ties, had a grandmother. What happened to her? What happened to the rest of the family? She didn't know. So it wasn't DNA, but you never know who has that information that you need. And that's the only thing I can suggest, because this has been a problem for you for a long time.
Thank you.
Questions? No questions. Come on, everybody. I can talk forever, but okay, Gail, go ahead. Unmute yourself. Yeah.
Not so much a question. I wanted to give you a little update. I thought about it when I first came on. I think it was in May or June. I had asked you about a family who it's my in-law family of a man who's 103 years old, and through DNA, you brought up DNA, we were connected to parts of his family. She had been inquiring, and you shared some information on screen with me that led her this woman to contact you and get some town records, make a donation as well. Okay. And unfortunately, just 2 weeks ago, our 103-year-old man died. But he was able to, I mean, you know, besides all the sadness and whatever else, before he died, having known there were these connections, he was able to share a lot of, not a lot, names and information that led all of these connections to happen. And my nephew and I, she's not my relative, she's my nephew's relatives, we're in touch with this woman, and she is searching and finding out what has happened to this family that presumably died, but she's finding some branches that maybe didn't die and stuff like that. So thank you for all that you shared between her and I and my nephew. He's finding answers and finding out more about his family that he knew nothing about a few months ago.
Stanley, I see that Sue has her hand up.
Yeah, I just want to, Sue, just hold on a second. But just one thing that I want to do is to just touch on what Gail said. I think we all, there are two words that we should never have to say in Jewish genealogy, and that is if only. If only I had asked, if only, if only. And I've used that expression ever since I discovered the fact that my grandmother's obituary in the Canadian Jewish Review in 1963, when she died at 103 years old, the Canadian Jewish Review, the full-length column, the column was from top to bottom, and in it she says, it says that Mrs. Diamond loved to tell stories of her childhood in Poland. If only I was listening. And so the moral of the story is don't wait. Find and ask those older people. And when I went to Poland in 1995 and found the blacksmith that had been the apprentice to my father's first cousin, and he just absolutely revealed incredible information about this entire family that you see on the right-hand side of the JRI Poland masthead. It led to so much in the way of knowledge and so much in the way of information. So like I said, don't wait. Sue, go ahead, ask your question. Unmute yourself, please.
I'm trying. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I don't know how much of a question it is. I'd have to strike gold to get any response, but I've been searching since about 1990 to tear down a brick wall. And you were talking about DNA. And for a long time, I resisted doing DNA. And I finally found a person that I thought might be connected. And he said to me, well, you know, I think we are too. So if you'd like to, you find the place to do the DNA and I'll do it. So anyway, I thought, okay, brace yourself. I'm going to do DNA. And I knew about FTDNA because I had gone to one of the original lectures on it. And at that time, they could only do Y-DNA. And it didn't help me because I didn't have a male person to do any testing. And it still probably wouldn't get me very far. So anyway, we did the DNA only to find out, and he had Montreal connections as well. And I was looking for the name Greenberg, and his grandfather was a Greenberg, but he had died when his father was just a little boy. So his mother remarried and changed the name to Gordon, and they left and went to the States. But we thought there might be a connection. We did the DNA, there was no connection, but it made me do the DNA. And since then, I've been like doing DNA pretty much every day. And up until, let's see, I think I had a bit of, well, I could call it a breakthrough last December when I found out that the name I'd been looking for since 1990 wasn't Greenberg, but probably Eisenberg. And so all those years I spent looking and looking, but it was a family relative who had been in her 80s who said she thought the name was Greenberg that I was looking for. So with that, I searched and searched. So the DNA was really helpful that way. I still haven't broken the barrier for the right Eisenberg, but when Ancestry said they were taking down the 6 to 7.9 centimorgans, everybody said, oh, well, that's just noise and that kind of thing. But I've been able to go back on some lines that I can trace. And I've had people that were like 5th, 6th cousins that I already had done paperwork. And those trails led to the same thing that these people with low DNA did match me. So I thought, well, I'm going to do what I can. And I went through and I spent like 10 hours a day going through as many as I could and documenting them and sorting. And because of that, I found that while I was doing most of my searches in a Litvak area, because I do come out with both Litvak and Galician areas. So then I found out that most of these Eisenbergs that I'm related to are from Galicia. So I can't stress enough that Stanley's right, that doing the DNA is really important because, and then I didn't want to switch from FTDNA, I'm really stubborn, and I didn't want to go to Ancestry, but when I was going to the conference in Poland, I thought, maybe I just better do another test and see if I had something else I could learn before I went to Poland. So I did that one, and sure enough, that opened up a whole nother avenue. And you're encouraging me that I should do the, what's the other one? MyHeritage. So I haven't done that. I haven't transferred that yet.
Well, you know, something very interesting about this whole DNA fascination and the wonderful things that have happened. I mean, I personally have been involved in 10 cases of people discovering they had Jewish roots and wanting to know more, including finding my first cousins or being contacted by my first cousin's son in New York. And of course, no one in the family knew that this particular first cousin had been wandering during his years of marriage. And I knew him very, very well. And I'm just so frustrated that I couldn't call him on the phone and say, by the way, your son in New York wants to talk to you. I don't have any sons, you know. But anyway, one of the interesting things about what you've just said is the fact that just the smallest connection, you know, the smallest centimorgans, whatever it is, can be useful if you can bring together other matches. And this is what I find helpful about MyHeritage is that when you get a match on MyHeritage, and I had one this morning, they show you who the other people are related to, and you are related to as well. So this morning, the MyHeritage result showed me this new man, and who else he's related to that I am related to, and the distance, second cousin, 5 times removed, whatever it is. Of course, we could probably just throw out some of the stuff and say, oh, this is not relevant. But the one thing that it does teach you is which branch of your family they are related to. So in this particular case, this man is related to my mother's family. And that is very helpful because you can then isolate those search results and say, okay, at least I know where he fits. It may be 3rd, 4th, 5th, 10th generation, but we know where it fits. And so that's the very helpful thing about DNA. And that's another reason why it's important to get your relatives tested on each branch. And in this particular case, the relative that I had tested was my mother's first cousin, Avi Morowitz. He was the only surviving member of my mother's generation. And he absolutely said, no, 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 no. And finally, you know, I went to his office with a DNA kit. I went into chapter and verse why this was important. And finally said, okay, okay, okay. Sometimes it takes hammering that way in order to get somebody to agree to do a DNA. You know, Sue was reluctant for years, but at the end of the day, she's learned something. And in this case, because Avi agreed, let me give you the other part of that story, because it is Avi Morrow's father, Avi Morowitz, Reuben Morowitz, was Reuben Hyatt. And I knew that the Taylors in Dublin were Hyatts, and I wanted to get the Taylors to do the DNA. And Gideon, who's now the head of the claims conference, and his father absolutely refused. But a year ago, I got an email from a lady in Toronto who said that her husband has come up as a close match to me. And he said, and she said, by the way, he's a first cousin of Gideon Taylor, which finally confirmed after all these years of being in touch with Gideon since 1994 that we are definitely cousins. But it's the same thing, is that people are reluctant. And when you do get them to make that DNA test, you never know what's going to happen. And the important thing, as I said, is getting the test from each branch of your family so that you can then triangulate with search results that you get from other people. Another question, any question? Yeah, hi, Merrill.
Just to follow up, when you were saying about the reluctance, I've also asked several of my cousins who have either have absolutely no interest or who say they're skeptical and or don't want to spend the money. I mean, that you can pay for, but what reasons, how can you convince somebody who just says they're skeptical or who is not interested?
Well, I think the key thing is they can do it anonymously. You know, say, look, you don't have to reveal who you are. Do it anonymously and let me manage your file. If they say anonymous, you can never change that. So that takes care of the if you will, the apprehension. Oh my God, people are going to know that. You never know down the road whether, you know, my second cousin once removed was a criminal. You know, all these things that people express concern about. My daughter, and I've got 3 daughters. My twins did a DNA because they wanted to see if they were 100% identical. It turns out they're only 99.8% identical because the DNA has changed through environmental circumstances, but they are identical twins. And in the case of my third daughter, she said, no way. She says, you know, all my daughters have American passports. 2 of them still live in the States. And she said, you never know when an insurance company is going to get their hands on DNA. And particularly if you look at what MyHeritage and 23andMe are doing, they're providing health results. They're saying, what are your percentage chances to have this, to have that kind of medical condition? So as a result, that has made her apprehensive.
Yes, and especially now with COVID, they also look at.
I'm sorry, Andres, repeat.
With COVID-19, now they look at your DNA if you are susceptible to get complications with COVID-19. That's a newest trick now.
Thank you, but Stanley, if you ask them to do it anonymous, and you say you manage, what is the procedure for that?
Well, I don't know the exact procedure, but
no, but what does that mean?
Well, if they're anonymous, no one can trace the DNA back to them.
But then how do you trace it?
because you have their search results, you have their results, you get their results. You are managing their file.
I manage my cousin's DNA, and I just have his first name, but any results or any inquiries or anything come to my email address.
Yeah.
I see. So like in 23andMe, is there some way you can say, I will manage this particular site? Like I have another cousin who has done.
The answer to the question is you obviously have to get permission.
Yeah.
They have to submit it themselves, but they have to also give permission that this be managed by you.
Thank you.
I would like to, may I tell you just a very quick happy DNA story? I got an email from somebody asking if I knew certain people in a family, and I said kind of. It was my grandmother. The history was that my grandmother's sister gave away her daughter, and we never knew what happened to the daughter. I thought the daughter was deceased. Anyhow, it turns out the daughter is alive and well, living in LA, 99 years old. We have a family Zoom meeting every 3 weeks, and this lady has participated with blood relatives that she never could have imagined that she had.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that story just repeated over and over and over again. In some cases, it's such an incredibly satisfying story. I mean, I've got 2 cases in Montreal where a man found a daughter he didn't know he had. It was one of those very short relationships, never knew. And when she approached him, because she found him, he wrote me and he said, what do I do? I'm not 100% sure, et cetera, et cetera. So he then did the DNA and it confirmed it. She has become part of his family. And he said it's been his kids have been receptive. His kids have been wonderful. And they're all together as, if you will, they were together around the Seder table. So, that's a great family opportunity for bonding. And, the other case, and I mentioned to you, this man just, the brother in Montreal, the half brother in Montreal said, look, my father is getting on in age. He's fragile. And I hate saying it, but he said, my mother and father hate each other. And if she finds out, it'll just give her another reason to make his life more miserable. So I guess he's waiting for his father to pass on before he comes back to me. And I can tell you that this has happened now on 2 occasions where somebody finds the connection. And I did that for a woman, an Italian woman in Toronto. And the family in San Diego, absolutely the brother of her father who had passed on, absolutely said it was impossible. His brother didn't, out of the question. And we left it that way. And then finally, 10 years later, I was driving with my daughter in San Francisco when I got this call from the man in San Diego. He said, Stanley, I have to come clean. I not only knew that my brother had a daughter, I knew his girlfriend and I had seen the baby. And what he was afraid of was his brother's children in San Diego and how they would accept it. They came together a year ago. The conference was supposed to be held in San Diego this year. And so the lady from Toronto she's already met them once, but she was going to fly to San Diego so we could all be together. So all I can tell you is sometimes it happens quickly and sometimes you have to wait until that proper moment, or for some people, that moment that they're ready to do the the meeting and accept who their brother, sister, uncle, aunt, mother, father are. Yes, Susan.
Yeah, this just going back to the Paters for a second. I know that the son who ended up in Montreal's name is Harry Moscovich. We don't know why he took the name Moscovich. I know that his name in Poland was Svi because of Gary's work on the cemeteries. I could see that, that was his name, given name on his tombstone. But why? I mean, I don't know. None of us can figure out why he would have gone from Pater. It's not like he went to a very not Jewish name. He chose Moscovich. If you any ideas what or how you can figure that out?
Okay, so I have lots of ideas whether or not they're realistic or not, but let me give you two examples of unexplainable or partially. My grandfather, when he left Poland, the name was Arker, A-R-K-E-R, and every Arker in Poland, a descendant of an Arker family, are my relatives. According to Bader, Arker is a derivative of the Hebrew name Aaron, which we know Aaron is Arka, and so that's where the name came from. Why he changed the name in 1890 from Arker to Diamond, my father said that his father had changed the name because he found a diamond and it was good fortune and God's wish. So when his wife and children came over and his parents and his siblings came over, they all came over as diamonds. At a Shiva 3 years ago, and I've told this story before, so pardon me if you've heard it. At a Shiva 3 years ago, 3-4 years ago, I was telling the story to the son of my oldest living relative, the wife of my first cousin. And so when Toby died, there we were at the funeral, and that's the way people tell stories about family history, etc. And I mentioned the story of how the name was changed and why the name was changed. And yet my cousin Herb Steinhaus had heard a different story from his mother. And then Barry, the son of Toby, said, "That's not the story I heard. My father told me that his father told him that his father, my grandfather, Mendel, after he arrived from Poland, and he'd been in New York for a short period of time, he couldn't pay the rent, so he moved and changed his name." So is that, does that make sense? I don't know. We'll never know. For my genetic research, I was looking for a family from Poland with a very unusual name. And I knew they carried the trait, so I didn't know whether this other branch did as well. Could never find them until I found one person who told me that the De Mochers, this one De Mocher man, when he moved to New York, he was working for this marvelous man by the name of Goldberg, who was like a father to him. So he changed the name to Goldberg. I was looking for De Mochers, and I'm not trying to tell stories just to tell stories, but to try to point out that you sometimes can never know why. Not being able to pay the rent, trying to honor somebody, trying to distance yourself from the family in some way for some reason. But again, the secret may very well lie in the minds and records of another person about the brother or the uncle or the grandfather that changed his name for some unknown reason. And that's one of the reasons why we sort of reach out and ask these stories.
Now it's funny because the mother from Poland, the Pater, her tombstone says Moscovich. She took it too, which is very funny to us, but okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
Any more questions? Shia, you've been very quiet today, Shia.
I have something.
I'm taking it all in. I'm taking it all in. It's very, it's nice to see everyone.
Okay.
A lot of my questions are answered. You touched on the DNA, so it's good. It's good.
It's almost noon,
yeah,
Stanley, so if you want to wrap up.
I'm sorry, yeah,
I
Andreas?
said it's almost noon, so if you want to wrap up.
Yeah, yeah.
this is-
Andreas, you had a
Yeah.
question?
I have a question. I got this information, but that Alex Krakowski has put 20,000 files online about the Kiev gubernia. It's the 1875 Kiev gubernia Jewish census. 20,000 files, and they are all among the places you can imagine. They're all at, how is it called? Wikisource, at the Ukrainian Wikisource.
Yeah. He's been doing a remarkable job. You know, let me end up by, and again, if you're interested, for the conference last month, there was a presentation on the DOJR, the Documentation of Jewish Records Worldwide. And if you're not familiar with that, I'll just tell you very simply, it's an initiative to find and record and to share every source of Jewish records in the world, wherever they may be. And I'm very proud to serve on the executive committee with Sally Ann Sack, the editor of Avotenu, and Marlis Humphrey, who is leading the project, who is the retired past president of the International Association of Jewish Genealogical Societies. And if you're interested in that presentation, which I think most people will find fascinating, you will see how the model for this organization has been built. And the testimonial to the importance of it is the fact that Ancestry.com and Family Search have already agreed to include their data on Jewish sources in the DOJR. And we've already got people in Australia who are collecting every piece of possible information in Australia. So that gives you an idea of the importance. And that's, you know, keeping in mind that the goal is to find every piece of genealogical information, no matter where it is, and to inspire people to index and extract it. This is not an indexing project. This is just a catalog called JCAT of Jewish records. Thank you all for joining me today, and
Shana Tova.
I hope we'll see you soon. Shana Tova,
Shana
a
Tova to
healthy
all.
year above all. Let's hope that the virus ends, that we get the
Sure. Sure.
someday soon we'll all get back to normal. Be well, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sandy. Thank you.
Thank you.